Okay, well, so we left the spies in Rahab last week, and now we go up the road a little ways to Gilgal, or well, not quite to Gilgal. Gilgal will be the camp they'll cross into. Crossing, go over to the Jordan River and the crossing. They carry the ark out in front of. You see the people in the background of that picture, and Moab is up on the plain there in the back, and this is the command to cross the Jordan. And so I've got several slides I want to show you. I found it very interesting as I was looking into the geography and everything. And so this is a map we looked at last time. And so they started at the camp in Shittim, you see there, and it is 10, 12 miles from Jericho across the Jordan River. They will camp, as you look on the map there, at Gilgal. Once they cross, they will fight the Battle of Jericho, and then they'll fight a battle at Ai, which is up the road away. Eventually, they'll go up to Shechem at Mount Gerizim. But that's kind of a map of the goings on there. We looked last time at the caves. Last time I found it interesting. I did not know about the caves that were less than a mile from Jericho. That most likely this is where the two spies went and hid while they were looking. So you see, the caves would be up there near Jericho, and the soldiers of Jericho were searching over towards the river, and so the spies actually stayed close to Jericho, and did not get caught. We're able to return. We looked at this map. This is a different route, looking at the same thing. Possible route of the Jews there on the right. That would be from Shittim. There is a place where they're fairly sure they crossed, where there is a shallow ford, a good place to cross there. You see Jericho, and then that's what Jericho looked like. Next week we'll look at reconstructions of the city of Jericho, but we know where it is. They've dug up the ruins. So there were two walls, an outer wall, and then a little bit higher, an inner wall on a hill like that for Jericho. So a very tough city to conquer. As long as they had food and water, would be almost impossible for an army to take, unless, of course, the walls suddenly fell down. And then it would be rather easy to defeat. But you see, I also want you to look at the elevation there a little bit. Now this is, you see on one side the African tectonic plate, and you see the Arabian tectonic plate. You look and so you see that the Jordan River Valley is a very low place. And you look all the way up there to the north, you see the Sea of Galilee, and down at the bottom you see the Dead Sea. All that's emptying into the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is the lowest elevation on earth. There's no place above water that is lower in elevation. Another thing that I will point out, if you look up, you see Adam there, the city of Adam. So God will stop the Jordan River, back it up, all the way from Adam down to the Dead Sea. When the Israelites cross, they cross on dry land. So here is another view of the same thing. Here you see on the right, you see the Dead Sea, lowest elevation, minus 1,410 feet below sea level. So then you see probably there, that little line is where the shallow ford, the low point of it is. You can see the plains of Moab, which is the floodplain for the Jordan River. But most of Moab, you see, and Ammon are elevated up the hills. And then once you cross there in the Jordan River Valley, you go up, it says the hills of Ephraim, and that's what it will be later known as. And on the other side, there's a ridge, we would say a hill. They call it hills rather than mountains. You come up this Rift Valley and go across the hills and then you go down the other side, and Jerusalem's on the other side of those hills. Also, I would point out, you see Gad. There were three tribes that will stay on the eastern side, and the one that we can see in this picture is the tribe of Gad, where they lived on those ridges, deserty ridges. So then here is a picture today of the ford that is a likely candidate for where they would cross. They don't know this is where they crossed, but you can see the Jordan. Now, the one thing I'd point out, the river is very low there, and when they go across, we'll see in the scripture it was at flood stage, and so it was much wider when the Israelites wanted to cross because of the time of year they were crossing. But that is the actual. So you see in the background, you see the plain of Moab, and then you see the mountains and the high desert of Moab in the background. All right, that is the Jordan River just east of Jericho, and you see a little bit deeper there. But again, I don't think this picture is taken during the flood stage, but you get an idea of the Jordan River. Here's a map again. I love maps and topography, and so just a different angle so you can kind of see. Jericho is right at a crossroads, and that's not an accident. They put a fortified city there to guard different invasion routes that an attacker would have to come by Jericho, this fortified city, in order to get there. So Israel is coming from the plains of Moab, and then you can see the hills going up. You see the Jordan River Valley there. And then as you go up out of the valley, out of the river valley, Jericho is right there on the beginning of the ridge, and you'll climb the ascent of Adumim and so forth. The hills of Ephraim later will be known, and those roads cross, and then you see Jerusalem over on the left side as you kind of begin to go down out of Jerusalem is still in the hill country, but it is on the downward slope of the hill country. And then as you go towards the Mediterranean Sea, it becomes really nice farmland, a land flowing with milk and honey. So that's your geography look at. We are focused on Israel and Jericho, and they will camp at Gilgal before they go into Jericho. So Israel crosses the Jordan. Joshua chapter 3, verse 1, then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from the acacia grove, and they came to the Jordan River, he and the children of Israel, and they lodged there before they crossed. So it was after 3 days that the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, saying, when you see the ark of the covenant of Yahweh your God, and the priest and the Levites bearing it, carrying it, then you shall set out from your place, from your camp, and go after it. So after 3 days, pick up everything and be ready to move when we move the Ark of the Covenant. And so you see there is one drawing of the children of Israel following in the wake of the Ark of the Covenant. Having arrived at the river, they stopped for 3 days. Everyone had an opportunity to see the river, now a strong and rapid current due to the melting of the winter snows on Mount Hermon in the north. And this is talked about in the scripture, the spring, they are in springtime, and the river's in flood stage. So for all the 40 years, they had followed the pillar of cloud, but it would no longer lead them. Now they were to follow the Ark of the Covenant. So in the wilderness, they had a special case. God was leading them, you could say supernaturally, with that pillar of cloud and the column of fire at night. But now he commands them. We're seeing this in Exodus in our this week, our Exodus scripture, Exodus 24 and 25. God prescribes how to build the tabernacle and how to build the Ark of the Covenant, which are physical manifestations of God's presence. Okay? So when you think about the church building, does the church building do something spiritual for us? Its existence, as long as it exists, we are in contact with God. Is that the way it is? Is that why we have a church, to keep us connected to God? No. It's a symbol, as much as anything, of a community, of our spiritual community, our spiritual family. And the same thing is going on here. God was a column of cloud. God was thunder and lightning. God was a column of fire at night that they could see the glory of God. And now he is telling them, make some symbols. The Ark of the Covenant is not God. It's just a symbol of his presence. That's his throne, his seat, that as he dwells among us, that's where he sits. That's his chair, his favorite chair. And so I think it's important. Same thing with the tabernacle. It is not God, and it is not necessary for a spiritual relationship with God, but it is a symbol of God's presence among them. No army scouts would advance first into the land, but rather priests would go first with the ark, putting God out in front, not trusting our military might. And there is, God tells them at various places, many times, don't count your soldiers. Because if you count your soldiers, you'll have confidence in them, or you'll have fear because you don't think there's enough, but you won't trust me to win the battles for you. And it is so much what we do with God. Trusting God is fine, but I'd like to also have $1 million or whatever. Trusting God is fine, but I'd like to have a new car. Trusting God is fine, but I'd like to have blah, blah, blah. And so it's very important to have these symbols that God is leading, God is first. We are coming into the land not because we're here to get rich and make our score. We're coming because God has commanded us to come and because God is giving us the land. And so, symbol is not the same thing as reality necessarily, but symbolically, if we put God first symbolically, there's a much greater chance that we will put him first spiritually. And so as we talk all the time about holiness and being holy, us being holy does not equal our spiritual faith. Us being holy is symbolic of us moving the things that stand between us and God out of the way. God can have relationship with us in sin, and he does, but when we work to move the things away, that is moving God to the top of our priority list. And that's what they're doing here. They're putting him out first and trusting in God rather than in their armies. God tells them, sanctify yourself, make yourself holy. In verse 4, yet there shall be a space between you and the ark, about 2,000 cubits. A cubit's 18 inches. So that's 1,000 yards. So that is over a third of a mile. He commanded them to follow behind the ark about a third of a mile. Do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you must go. So again, in the same way that column of smoke led them in the wilderness, the Ark of the Covenant is now leading them into the land For you have not passed this way before. I'll reveal to the priests where to go, and you follow them. Joshua said to the people, sanctify yourselves, make yourself holy. Now, for the Israelites, they had been commanded certain rituals to go through. Again, they are symbolic. Those symbolic actions do not make you holy. It is when you believe God and you are obedient to do the things that the cleansing comes. See that? So somebody could follow all the laws, cleaning their hand, cleaning their clothes, cleaning their house, all the different things they need to do. But in their mind, they didn't really believe it. Why are we doing this, Dad? I don't know why we're doing this. Because we're Jews, we do it. It doesn't do any good. It is when you are obedient to God to follow details, rituals, because you believe God, that it has the spiritual effect. Same thing for us. Stopping drinking does not in and of itself make you closer to God. But when you stop drinking alcohol because you want God to be, your mind to be clear, you want to be closer to God, you want to make God more important, you want to be healthy before Him, and so you have that inner intentionality, that is a huge step towards God if the intention is going with it. Sanctify yourselves tomorrow, outwardly clean, inwardly, intentionally clean. For tomorrow, Yahweh will do wonders among you. So why 3,000 feet? To remind of the sacredness of the ark. Later in 2 Kings, there is an incident. No. It would be in 2 Samuel, I believe. There's an incident where the ark had been captured by the Philistines. They went and got it. It was on an ox cart. It hit a bump in the road, and it tipped and started to fall off the ox cart. And a guy just reached out and touched it. Just a regular guy reached out and touched it. Well-meaning, he wasn't thinking about what he was doing. He was doing a natural impulse. And he righted the ark, but he touched the ark without being told to by God, and he dropped dead. God took him out. And so, keeping it holy, this ark is the presence of God. It is set apart. Only these priests who have gone through and cleansed themselves can even touch the acacia poles that touch the ark. They're not allowed to reach out and touch the ark either. And the holiness of God it represented, so we stay back in awe of God. No casual or careless intimacy with God, reaching over and touching the ark, giving it a rub, giving it a little polish of affection, but a profound spirit, internal, intentional spirit of respect and reverence for God. That's when we're getting really holy, when the internal, the spiritual, is reverent and respectful of God. And we are taking our priorities and we're setting them aside and embracing God's priorities. God is not to be considered just the man upstairs. And I don't have a big issue with that. One of the problems with Christianity, because God is personal, our personal Savior, we tend to adopt Him, and He is our friend, but He is still holy, holy, holy. And sometimes the man upstairs, some people like to give God a nickname. It's bordering on being vain, God's name in vain, when we are flippant in any way with God and not keeping Him holy. So God is not to be considered the man upstairs, but the sovereign and holy God of all the earth, the Creator, who is not human, not like us, who is set apart. He is not common. He is not average. He is not normal. He is unnormal. Why did God command sanctification rather than sharpen your swords? Let's get all the troops out first. Let's be ready for an attack. Spiritual, not military preparation was needed at this time because God was about to reveal himself. The people needed to be ready spiritually. They were terrified. We've talked about it. They did not want to do this thing. They did not want to drive the inhabitants out of the land any more than you or I would. But the problem was not a military problem. It was a spiritual problem. Spiritual, not military preparation was needed at this time because God was about to reveal himself by performing a great miracle in Israel's midst. And if we are not prepared spiritually for God to do miracles, then when we see a miracle, we'll explain it some other way. Just like people who don't believe in God. We'll do the exact same thing. We'll trust in ourselves. We'll say, boy, we're lucky. Or we're good. Well, when we want to do something, we'll do it. We've got to be careful. If we're not prepared spiritually, even when God does a miracle, we won't see it as a miracle. Preparation, what that God wanted them to do, was to prepare to meet God, not to meet the Canaanites. As we go through life, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but it's against spiritual principalities and powers. That is, those principalities and powers tell them, you did that, not God, and you deserve better than that. God should treat you better than that. That's what principalities and powers tell you. And so our enemies are not other people. What we have to overcome is those voices that are telling us that our life is all about us. Our life, we are here to serve God and keep him holy. The same command was given back at Sinai when they got to Sinai back in Exodus 19. We actually went through this recently with our sermon series, Exodus 19, 10 through 13. Yahweh said to Moses, consecrate, which is the same thing as sanctify, the people. Let them wash their clothes. Let them wash their bodies. Let them be ready for the third day. So notice that again. Notice the parallel there. When they went up to the Jordan River, they were to wait 3 days and to sanctify themselves. Same thing at Sinai. Let them be ready for the third day. For on it, Yahweh will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Is the third day, is that significant in Christianity too, or is that just an Old Testament thing? On the third day, God arose. God the Son arose from the grave. Set bounds all around, so limits for the people, so that it says so that people will rush up and touch Mount Sinai. Being awed by God, being amazed by God, wanting to be near God, they might run up and touch and make God unholy in their life, or let their unholiness touch God, and they'll get zapped. So he said, make boundaries. Take heed that you do not go up to the mountain or touch its base, because that is the presence of God, and that is dangerous for people that are sinful. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death. He shall surely be stoned or shot with an arrow. Whether man or beast, he shall not live. But that was not all. Israel was to expect God to work a miracle. That's what it means to trust God. That he's going to do something that we can't explain, that does not have to do with us. They were to be eager. They were to be gripped by a sense of wonder, amazement at who God is, amazement at their salvation. And that's, again, the problem with Christianity is familiarity, and we lose that sense of wonder of God. We are able to talk to God all the time, and he does. He kind of becomes the man upstairs in the back of our mind, and we lose our wonder. Israel was not to lose sight of their God, who can do the incredible and the humanly impossible, what man cannot do. So it's going to talk about this. This is the priest standing on dry ground in the Jordan River, holding the ark as the people cross. God says, take the ark and cross over the river. So in Joshua 3:6, then Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, take up the ark of the covenant and cross over before the people so they can see. So they took up the ark and they went before the people. You shall stand in the Jordan, he goes on to tell them in verse 7. And the Lord said to Joshua, this day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of Israel. So people still are faithful to Moses. I'm going to begin to make you great in their mind. They're going to begin to defer to you, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. You shall command the priest who bear the ark of the covenant, saying, when you have come to the edge of the water of the Jordan, you shall stand in the Jordan. Walk to the river and stand in. The living God is among you. Verse 9, so Joshua said to the children of Israel, come here. Hear the words of the Lord your God, Yahweh your God. And Joshua said, by this you shall know that the living God is among you. Very spiritual people. Everybody was very spiritual in the ancient world. Everybody had gods. And personal gods, they would have statues of their gods, and they would shine it, and they would actually bathe it. It said, look, put it in bed at night, cover it up, the little idols. And they'd set a bowl of food by it. They'd sacrifice an animal and cut up the meat, and they'd put it in a little bowl, and they would set it by the idol at night while it slept in case it wanted a midnight snack. And of course, none of that food was ever eaten. They would come and throw it out or give it to the animals in the morning. But Joshua will know the living God is among you, and this is how you'll know. And that he will, without fail, drive out from before you. Now, we talked about this at the beginning of the book of Joshua in the preliminary. This drive out is the main verb used when talking about taking the land from the Canaanites, Hittites, and so forth, rather than go in and murder people. Walk up behind them and murder them. No, it doesn't say that. As I've said over and over, the people of the land, the dwellers in the land were, according to the perspective of the Bible authors, they were there illegally, and their first and best option was to leave. Go, present yourself, and hopefully they'll take off. They'll leave. They'll flee from before you, and you can take the land. If they do not, then you will have to use force to move them. But I think it's important to note, most of the time when it is described, the living God will, without fail, drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, Perizzites, and Girgasites, Amorites, and Jebusites. So a couple notes. Canaanite is a language, just like we talk about Hebrew. In fact, in the pyramid of languages, the Hebrew language is a subset or a dialect of Canaanite. So it's the same language. So the Canaanites are one that speak this formal language. When we can understand Canaanite, it's different. We speak a dialect that is different. Hittites were from a different region. They had had an empire. By this point, their empire was beginning to wane, but their empire had reached down over the land of Canaan at one point. So there were pockets of Hittites. Their empire was in what's now Turkey. Hivites and Perizzites, we're not exactly sure where they're from. I have heard that Perizzites may be what we would say country folk. That Canaanite, being this big language group, are city folks. They lived in walled cities. And you can imagine how awesome a walled city would be if you'd grown up in tents all your life, living in tents in the wilderness. Perizzites were people possibly that did not live in cities. Girgasites, I believe there's a city related to Girgasites. Amorites are Semitic people. The Babylonians and the Assyrians, who are big empires, are Amorite people. They speak Semitic. So all these people are Semitic language people. Canaanite is a subset of Semite. Hebrew is a dialect of Canaanite. And so all of these people speak a similar language. Amorites are Semites, just like the Hebrews are. So these would be people related to the Assyrians and the Babylonians who have migrated. Now, do we know of any important biblical figures that were Semitic people living in Mesopotamia and they migrated to the Promised Land? Can y'all think of anybody? That's Abraham. And so it is possible, and somebody who knows a lot more than me might really be insulted by me saying this, I don't know. But it's very possible that the Hebrews through Abraham have descended from the Amorites. All of these people speak Semitic. So when we say Semitic people, we're not just talking about the Hebrews, we're talking about anybody who speaks in this big language group, including Arabic. So most Muslims speak Arabic. Arabic is a Semitic language. So to say anti-Semite, which the way we use it now, all Arabs would be anti-Semitic, is actually kind of a false category because they are Semitic too. So if they're anti-Semite, they hate themselves. Jebusites was from the city of Jebus, and it was an impregnable fortress conquered by David. He took it as his city, and it became Jerusalem. So that Jebusites were Semitic people that lived in the city of Jebus, that after David conquered it became Jerusalem. So a lot of information there. I think we need, time-wise, we need to stop right there for today, and we'll pick up at that point and watch them cross that Jordan River next week.